Okay, so before I take you through this process, I want you just to make sure that you can remain undisturbed for approximately the next 5 to 10 minutes so that you can fully immerse yourself in this process, in this experience. So what you're looking for here is to pick a time from your past where you have been criticised, and perhaps it felt bad at the time, maybe you've got over it, or perhaps it still stings a little bit. If you can't think of something or a time when you've been criticised, then pick something that involves conflict. And what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to go back inside your mind and relive the experience, to see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel the feelings that you felt when you were being criticised. But I'm not going to just leave you there, that would be a little bit harsh. What I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage you to take a step outside of you and then experience the whole thing from a neutral observer's perspective, from a clean third. And I'm going to give you some guidance as to how to orientate this inside your mind. And by doing so, you can start to get new insights. You can start to see the situation from a very different perspective. It will allow you to lessen the emotional intensity, to gain this new objectivity, and I know that new learnings, new insights will become available to you. You might even get a sense when you're in this position of what the criticiser's positive intention is. You might not, that's fine. There's another step we're going to be adding on later on throughout this process that can really help you gain access to that. But often we can see it when we take a step back and look at it from this neutral observer's, this mediator's position. So, there are two ways that you can do this. You can do this purely with your imagination, or you can involve physicality with it too. So when you are taking the neutral observer's position, if you like, you can actually step up out of where you're sitting and then take a different position in the room. Sometimes just moving about can help you imagine it more fully inside your mind. Ultimately, it's all an imaginary technique, but sometimes when you involve physiology, it can actually make it much more powerful and a lot easier to do. So I'll leave that entirely up to yourself. You can do the whole thing sitting down in your imagination, or if you want to actually stand up and take a different position in the room, then that can sometimes help with the process. So wherever you are, if you can just close your eyes, and I want you just to go back inside your mind to this particular situation, this time where you were criticised, where perhaps someone said something to you in a way that was not particularly well crafted or even presented, and it hurt, it stung, it really did make you feel some bad emotions. And I want you just to honestly go back into this time to the extent where you step back into the you that was experiencing that way back then. So I'd like you to play it through in any way that you can find possible right now, through self. So that would be, of course, through first. So I'd like you to relive it through your own eyes, your own ears, your own feelings, connected with your own opinions, what you think about this particular situation. And I'd like you to play it through from this perspective, as if it's happening right now. And as you play it through, I know that you'll start to recover some of the negative feelings, or some of the feelings that were connected with that particular experience. That's okay, we're going to make some changes very soon. But as you play this through from start to finish, hearing the other person criticise you and how it makes you now feel, I'd like you just to pay attention to what you think about the situation. What's your opinion? And you don't have to voice this out loud unless you want to. You can simply just reflect on it. So what do you think about this situation? What's your opinion about the criticism that's been given to you? And then I'd like you just to pay attention to what you're feeling in this situation. When we receive criticism, then it usually does shift our feelings. So I'd like you just to pay attention to the emotions, the feelings that you're feeling inside your body as you're reliving this experience. And you can put a label on these feelings if you like, you can say them out loud, you can write it down, it's entirely up to you, it's your own reflection. And next what I'd like you to do is I'd like you just to pay attention to how you are behaving in this situation. How are you behaving when you're receiving this criticism? Did you behave well? Did you behave poorly? Or something else? Just simply explore. And perhaps even from this position, you might actually gain access to some learnings because you're going back and looking at it through older and wiser eyes. So sometimes when we experience it another time from a fresher perspective, then extra information can become available to us. So maybe there's some insights, some learnings that suddenly pop into your mind as you experience this once again. So what I'd like you to do next is I'd like you to, inside your mind, just go back to the very start of that experience inside your mind. And I want you to step out of your own shoes, just to step out of your own skin. So literally go through this inside your imagination. What would it be like if you were to actually step out of you and then look back at you having the same experience as if it's happening to someone else? So it's almost as if someone was to film the entire interaction and you were to watch it through again from an impartial place. And what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to make your way to a place where you are equidistant between you and the other person. Now, the thing is, if they weren't in the room at the time, so say it was an email or there was a phone call, then you'll have to use your imagination just to fill in some blanks here. Perhaps you have two different rooms, you're on one side and the person's on the other side. Just do whatever you can to be equidistant in some fashion. Like I said, this will involve a bit of imagination, but that's absolutely okay. And then as you slot into that place where you're equidistant, as it kind of locks in place, you can start to feel the emotions drain away so that you can look on and actually start to simply just observe. That you can look over and go, oh, that's interesting. They're doing that and they're doing this. And it's almost like there's this cold researcher-like way of describing the experience to yourself. And also what I'd like you to add in is to make it so that you are, as much as you possibly can, at eye level. So you're not looking down, you're not looking up, you're pretty much at eye level between both parties. So you can move the image up and down if you like, or you can move yourself up and down inside your mind, just to make that so. And once again, as you slot into that space, then you can feel that sense of neutrality, of being that neutral observer, that mediator. And as you play through the experience from this perspective, I want you just to go, interesting. Just like you are a scientific researcher, interesting. And just simply collect data. Just simply observe information and go, that's interesting, let me collate that for a moment. And you may want to write down the new insights, the new learnings, or you may simply want to just experience them. Now, one thing I'm going to add in here, sometimes when people go through this experience, inside their mind they can still be too close in their imagination. So sometimes it's useful just to get a bit of distance. So if you're still finding it difficult to be completely neutral, then just take a few steps back inside your mind. You might even want to adjust your position in the room. You might want to walk away from this imaginary scenario and look on from a larger distance. That can help you just further remove from the experience to gain this sense of neutrality. All the time though, I want you just to pay attention to the new learnings, the new insights, new observations that you didn't really notice before because you were too much involved in yourself or too much involved in the other person. So just pay attention to what you notice, what's going on, who's behaving in what way and who's behaving in another way. And I'd like you just to pay attention to potentially what learnings can be drawn from this experience. What findings? You might even become curious about the positive intention of the person who's criticising. Sometimes people say that when they look at it from this neutral observer's perspective, all of a sudden the positive intention becomes obvious because they're no longer involved, they're no longer emotionally connected. It's like, okay, they're expressing it in a way that's not particularly effective, but that's what they're attempting to really get across. That's what they care about. So just pay attention to insights, learnings, things that come to mind when you look at it from this perspective. And when you're ready, when you're finished, I want you just to go back into self. You can take these learnings with you. And then when you're ready, once you've completed this process, you can open your eyes and come all the way back to the here and now. Okay, so what you've experienced there is the power of dissociation. that when we remove ourselves from a situation, from some kind of experience, we can start to look on with this sense of neutrality, and all of a sudden new insights, new perspectives become available to us. And these new insights, these new perspectives lead us to new learnings, which lead us to new ways of behaving, thinking and feeling in situations like this. So hopefully you got something from this. A lot of the time when we do this process, we don't quite get too much when we go through it, but often the insights can come afterwards too. It's a very reflective, it's a very creative process, so just trust it, go with it, and of course it does work better with practice. So when you're ready, I want you just to head over to the next video, and I'm going to add on some additional layers to this process, because we're only about halfway through. There are some more things that I'd like to encourage you to do that can really help you create the full story of what happens whenever we go through some kind of social interaction. So when you're ready, head over to the next video and we'll take a look at those additional layers.